Hello, everyone. I am Brian Seadorf, one of the librarians here at Blackman High School, and I get the opportunity to interview Jeff Pearlman, the New York Times bestselling author of Showtime, featured here in the Blackman High School Library, Football for a Buck, featured in our Blackman High School Library, Brett Favre Gunslinger, featured in our Blackman High School Library, Three King Circus, which actually just came back yesterday from a student. So that actually just now came back too. And then 17 other books. Actually, this is your 11th coming up. And outside of your normal realm, we have Only God. But I can't read upside down. Only God can judge me. There we go. I am excited to interview you for this. Thank you, Mr. Pearlman.
You can call me Jeff.
Yes, I'll call you Jeff. I actually had something happen just now in my library 15 minutes ago that sort of changed how I'm going to ask this first question.
Right.
It will be about why Tupac matters in the current culture. Right. In my high school, I see Tupac shirts every day. It is usually All Eyes on Me. It is Poetic Justice. Those are the two shirts that I see. And this girl came up and she owns one of these shirts. She says the praying one. And I said, "Oh, All Eyes on Me." Yes. She didn't know till 2 days ago that he was dead.
Oh.
And I don't blame her for this, but I also think that this book is coming out at sort of this resurgence of Tupac-ness into the culture. Why do you think he has made such an impact now in this sort of cultural comeback? But there's a lot of people in my school, they don't know who he is or what he's done.
Right. So I think that the negative reality is like the student you described with the shirt. She probably got that shirt at either Target or Walmart for $9. I'm not criticizing the student. I'm saying literally Target and Walmart have a licensing deal with the estate where they can sell these really poorly made, 100% cotton, made in China, probably in a sweatshop, Tupac shirts right next to the Nirvana shirts. And the reality is many, many people are wearing Tupac shirts because they look like they're cool shirts. And if you played them Tupac songs, they wouldn't even know it's Tupac. Maybe they would know California Love because California Love has been used in a gazillion like Pixar movies and stuff like that. But they wouldn't know Tupac at all. So I don't even know if it's necessarily a resurgence so much as a marketing bonanza where you just have access to these shirts. Tupac was a cool, good-looking guy. The name Tupac sounds cool. Maybe they have some familiarity. There was this guy Tupac who was a rapper, but they don't know that much. And then on the other hand, Kendrick Lamar, you can make an argument. Kendrick Lamar and Drake are the two biggest rappers in America. And Kendrick Lamar, the impact that Tupac Shakur had on Kendrick Lamar is enormous. And Kendrick Lamar has made no secret of his admiration for Tupac, Tupac's music, Tupac's approach, Tupac's message. And I think that also has helped that Kendrick Lamar is preaching the gospel of Tupac Shakur. And also it helps that hip hop is bigger than ever. And on anybody's list, at worst, Tupac is one of the top 10 rappers. And in many people, he's considered the greatest rapper of all time. So those kind of things come on.
Yeah. She'd actually said she saw All Eyes on Me and she thought it was a new one. She thought it was a new album. And then I said, no, he made 4 and 50,000 new
29 years ago.
Yeah.
29 years is new. I mean, in the history of the earth, it's new. If you take the earth, it's definitely a new album.
That's it. I was fascinated by, she thought it was maybe a new one. And and I guess it is sort of a commercialism. Maybe that is the key to, I'm seeing it, and Nirvana shirts also everywhere. A student once said last year, I thought Nirvana was a brand.
Yeah. I mean, the funny thing is when I was working on this book for a while, I kind of abandoned it after a while, but one of my guiding questions was, how would Tupac Shakur, were he alive, feel about his shirt being sold for $9 in a Target? And I don't know the answer. On the one hand, his one of his early mentors was this woman, Layla Steinberg. And she said to me, more than anything, he wanted to be famous and he wanted to blow up. And what's a bigger blow up than 30 years after your death, 29 years after your death, people are still wearing your shirts. On the other hand, he was also very territorial about his music, his brands, what he wanted his image to be. And I think he would be somewhat horrified knowing that his t-shirts are being made in sweatshops in third world,
Yes,
third world anymore, but in poor nations, and probably kids are being paid, a penny on the shirt to make them. I think that would horrify him. This is probably both.
I agree. And I was thinking for me, because I'm old, uh, music was so important to me. It is an everyday aspect of my life. And as I know it is for you, it's such a huge part of your life. And what I've realized that for many people, it's not.
Mhm.
Music is not as important to people's lives as much, not for all, but for many students, it's not an everyday breath of life. Yeah,
No, I agree. I actually think it's interesting because I think we live in a scrolling culture, and that hasn't scrolling meaning next video, next video, next video, and that hasn't only impacted television. It hasn't only impacted the NBA where people would rather watch clips than see an actual game. I think it's impacted music and the patience to sit and listen to a 4 minute song. I just think like it's changed. We've changed the way we consume information. I mean, by writing books themselves, I'm kind of a dinosaur. Like the idea of reading 400 pages instead of just going like this, it's a real test of this medium and also our attention spans.
that's true. I will tell you something. If you want some hope in library world and reading world, last year our library and many libraries hit the bottom of books that were being checked out. We thought it was something wrong with us. The massive amount of resurgence of kids checking out books again this year is seen all over the country.
Yeah.
So I don't know why. Um,
I think one thing publishers, I just, it's really interesting. I received in the mail yesterday a Bruce Lee biography, right? And it's written by a great writer, and I'm sure it's really good. But the book is about 550 pages, and it looks like a brick, right? Like it looks like a brick. And to me, that's daunting, right? That's just daunting. And I do think publishers need to rethink a little bit just how do you get people to read books? And I think in this era, a 500-page brick book about Bruce Lee, that's a tough sell. Even if my book is probably 400 pages about Tupac, that is a tough sell, but it's easier to read. It's pretty digestible. You see the formatting, it's very digestible, etc. The pictures are colorful and bright and all that crap. But I just think it is a great sort of question we have going forward as authors, as teachers, is how do we get people to read? You know?
that's it. Speaking of that, one of my questions, I love the cover.
Yeah,
Love
I
the
do too.
cover. What I've learned, at least in all my years of library world, is that oftentimes authors don't have a say in what a cover looks like. Was that the same for you?
Oh, actually, so my publisher is Mariner, which is under the umbrella of HarperCollins, and they gave me a lot of say. And there were images initially I didn't like. There was also an image we were gonna go with, and then we couldn't get the rights from the photographer who's asking for too much money. Basically, a publishing house has, I think, at least in this case, maybe 10,000 to spend on an image, 5 to 10. And I think this person, I'm not criticizing him. It's his photo. He has every right to ask what he wants. I think he was asking like 25,000. And so we did go back and forth, looked at a ton of different images. And finally at the end, there were like 5 different options. And I picked that one and they went with me. So maybe it's just by virtue of being a little older and having written a decent number of books. Maybe I just am lined up with I feel like I am with a really good publishing house, but I actually had good say on this one.
I gotta be honest. It never dawned on me that you have to pay for the rights of the picture to
Sure.
go on the cover of your book.
Sure. You have to buy them. I mean, you're buying the photo and you're buying them oftentimes from individual photographers, and they have the right to say no. It's their work, you know?
Wow. I think I love the little minutia of the book industry like
Oh,
that, which, by the way, I met a lady the other day that said that she is majoring in book publishing at Belmont University in Nashville.
oh,
I had
cool.
not heard of this. And what
Neither.
she said, there's one of two places in the United States that there's a college with a major in book publishing. And Nashville is one of the largest book publishing places in the country. Thomas Nelson, Zondervan, that sort. But she said they're trying to break the book publishing just to get it out of its shell a little bit and teaching people how to do it.
It's an interesting industry, and I feel like one thing that the industry needs a lot of help with is promotions and media relations. I wrote my first book 20 years ago, and the way you promote a book is so drastically different now than it was then. Like back in the day, like my first book was a book about the 86 Mets, right? And it was like, all right, can we get a review in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch? Can we get a Q&A in the Daily News? It was all print oriented. Everything was print oriented. And even maybe 12 years ago, I had a Walter Payton biography come out, and I had a huge boom, which was the cover of Sports Illustrated was the book and the excerpt. Now, if you told me, I've used this example before, but it's true. If you told me you can have the cover of a magazine, Sports Illustrated, Rolling Stone, whatever, for your book, or you can have Justin Bieber put out one raving Instagram post about the book, I'm going with Bieber every time. If you told me I could get a New York Times review or I can get Bieber raving of the book, I'm probably going Bieber. It's just a different universe. Yeah.
I and I mean, I remember seeing. I believe you had pictures of you literally on a street corner of
Correct.
showing. I
For
can't
everything,
remember.
you have to sell your own book. You have to be your own publicist. You have to be your own everything. You just have to. No one's going to sell your book more than you are. And authors who just think like, all right, I'm done. I wrote it. Here you go. It's a short career in writing if you do that.
I'm going to get to Tupac here in just a moment, but I wanted to ask you. We had an author come to our school a few years ago, and this is something she said that I've never forgotten. Minnie McGinnis is her name, and she had 7 books on a table. And she said, I asked her, "How do you know when you're done?" And she said, "All of my books are 90% done."
Huh.
Would you agree with that statement for yourself?
I've never thought of it that way. I know I'm done because I have a deadline and I do. That's actually being serious though. Like, all right, this book is due at X point. I need to hand it in. Like I need to hand it. I literally need to hand this book in if I want to get paid and want to move on to the next book. So, you time it out. The thing is like a lot of it with probably with writing a book or even an article is it's smoothing it out, cutting the fat, cutting the fat, cutting the fat, reading through it a million times, getting rid of these words, getting rid of that words. All right, this passage isn't that important, or maybe this passage belongs here. This chapter is incomplete. It's a lot of smoothing and smoothing and smoothing. And at some point, it's just you just have to hand it over. That's just
You
it.
do.
Yeah.
I saw a quote yesterday, David McCullough, the American historian. He said, "I'm not a writer, I'm a rewriter."
Yeah.
And I thought that's a great quote. That's,
I feel like I'm a writer, but I'm also a book salesman.
oh, that's right.
That's what it
I
is.
get that one too.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about how your personal viewpoint of Tupac changed from when you first, before you started writing it, to now at the end, if
Yeah.
it changed.
Oh, drastically. So it's an interesting, this book has been the most fascinating and difficult and challenging of all the books I've written, like by far. It probably combines all of them into one. Um, Stating the obvious, I'm a white writer, sports writer. And Tupac is not just an icon, but he is a black icon, meaning he represents something to just so many black Americans, not just people who grew up in hip hop, but as a son of a Black Panther, as a guy who spoke about resiliency and fighting back and black empowerment and just black self-determination. Like he's that guy. And I went into this realizing like this isn't like Bo Jackson, where I speak the language of sports very fluently. And I consider myself a hip hop head. I can tell you the lyrics to a million different songs, all that stuff. But like it was a different world for me. And I think what really my eyes were open to are just the levels of trauma that consumed his life and made him who he was. The trauma start with just being a black kid in America back in the day, then add in abject poverty, like abject poverty, then add in his mom going from being this Black Panther hero and this icon who defended herself in a very famous trial called the Panther 21 trial that I really believe all schools should be teaching their kids about. Going from that, this icon level status to a crack addict and a oftentimes emotionally and physically unavailable mom to a kid who didn't have a male role model. His father wasn't a part of his life. Like the trauma this guy went through over and over and over and over again, just nonstop trauma, not just from being Black, but from being poor, combining the two, addiction, everything is so staggering. When I was done with the book, you would think like Tupac, California Love, Poetic Justice, Juice, Celebration of Life, Look at Him, Thug Life. I was sad, like I was heartbroken for Tupac and for what he went through. And his sister, I went to New Orleans and interviewed his sister, Set, who rarely does interviews. And she really laid it bare to me. She's like, he died alone. He did not die with joy around him and with friends around him. He died alone. And he was a figure who throughout his life was just used and used for money, for prestige, for, oh, I'm rolling with Pac. And oh, I know, like used nonstop. And he became everyone's meal ticket. And he didn't die with a lot of money. And he kind of died alone. And it was just a tragic, to me, Tupac Shakur, truly, this doesn't sell books, but it's a reality, is a very tragic story.
That is, it definitely goes against, not to come back to it, but the shirts that I see every day. There's
Correct.
that hidden behind that all eyes on me picture. The
I'll tell you a story real quick. So
Yeah,
that like, All Eyes on Me was a Death Row album. Death Row, the head of Death Row was Suge Knight. And when Tupac was signed to Death Row, it was after he got out of prison. And Suge Knight kind of bailed him out, although it was money against his future earnings, so it's a little manipulative. But he bails him out. And Suge Knight and Tupac and Snoop Dogg and a little Dr. Dre till he left Death Row. It's the biggest entity in music at that point in time, certainly in hip hop. So Tupac is filming the movie Gang Related with Jim Belushi. And I interviewed a ton of people who worked on that film with Tupac. And one day, Suge Knight shows up on the set and he's driving a new car for Tupac, a gift for Tupac. And he gets out of the car and the music is, he's blasting Tupac's music as he pulls up onto the set and he makes his big production of presenting Tupac with the keys to his car. Pac, I'm so proud of you, man. Your brother doing it. Here's your keys. This is your car, blah, blah, blah. And Tupac hugs him. Oh, thanks, man, blah, blah. Suge leaves. Tupac turns to someone he's working with and he's like, it's nothing. And he's like, what do you mean? He's like, I don't own this car. This car's leased. Everything I own is leased. I don't own anything. He's like, I don't own anything. And it was like, so much of it was just mirage, the mirage of death row, the mirage of glory, the mirage of, and Tupac was such a smart, creative soul, like a really brilliant, smart, creative, empathetic, would give the shirt off his back to a homeless guy, literally would give money to, and he was just taken advantage of over and over again. And I always think that's a very emblematic moment for Tupac.
wow. I think that's one of the things I was going to talk about too, was that creative part that I don't think people realize with Tupac. This is the most checked out book of poetry in my school's history.
Yep.
I
Yep.
mean, it's the rose that came from concrete. It is, I think this is the third copy I've had to buy. I usually have two on hand because they just get worn out or they end up not coming back, which I'm fine
Yep.
with.
Yep.
And from what I read in in your book about what poetry meant to him, how he would have the three black binders full of
Mhm.
poetry, I think that's that aspect, that creative aspect of him that I don't think people realize.
I agree. I think a lot of times people get confused and they consider him a guy who was writing raps from an early age. And in a way he was, but really he was writing poems. He was writing poems. He started writing haiku at a very young age. I got really lucky in this book. I, I flew out to Nebraska and I found a high school classmate of his from Baltimore. And it was his girlfriend in high school. And she'd never talked to anyone, spoken to anyone before. She lives in Nebraska. And her mom had recently found under the bed in a folder 150 love letters that Tupac had written to her when they were in high school together. This Tupac was a sophomore in high school, and there are these letters. And she said, if you come out to Nebraska, I'll show you the letters. I fly out to Nebraska. I'm like, I'll be there. I fly out to Nebraska. The writing is so beautiful, like just beautiful and heartfelt and damaged. And like, it's like the diaries of a teenager in a lot of ways through poetry. And it's, he loves her and he wants to marry her. He really wants to have physical intimacy with her. He hates her because she broke his heart. And it's like all these letters, and you can see how good he was a better writer at 15, I'm not saying I'm anything great than I am now. Like he was a brilliant, 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 expressive writer. You could see the trauma of living at home in a row house in Baltimore, the trauma of his mom just giving him so much trouble and the conflict. It's just it was amazing. So that guy was a poet. And also like people might think if you were to just ask people, who do you think Tupac was listening to? All right, Public Enemy. All right, he was listening to Public Enemy. Tribe Called Quest, Heavy Deep, blah blah, whatever. He loved like Kate Bush, Don McLean, Indigo Girls, Randy Travis. Like he had this wide, wide, wide swath of music that informed who he was, you know? And I think actually I saw there was a few years ago, there was a documentary about involving Dr. Dre. And he was talking about how much he loved Nirvana. I think a lot of
Yes.
times people take hip hop artists and they assume ignorantly that they just listen to hip hop. And most of the hip hop artists I've interviewed have a very, very deep knowledge of music. And you could talk to a guy from Digital Underground about Peter, Paul, and Mary, and he'll tell you as much about that group as he could, you know, NWA.
That's a, I think that's also the difference between the best of the best of those musical artists. They have a very wide palette of
Mhm.
people they listen to. And I think those are the ones definitely that I don't know, they last longer. Randy Travis, really?
Yeah, he was when he was writing that woman the love letters in high school. I forgot the name of the song because I'm not a Randy Travis fan or really a country music fan, but it was a song that he was playing over and over and over again. He kept listening to this Randy Travis song. Yeah.
That is fascinating. You talked some about traveling. I have we have some journalism students here that will see this. You dig, and you dig, and you dig, and you travel, and you ask, and probably get told no, and then you get some yeses.
Yeah.
Do you do you still love the chase?
Oh, I live for the chase. I don't love the rejection, but I love the chase. I love the find. Like, so Tupac spent his senior year of high school in Marin City, California, and then he lived there after. And I knew like he was heavily involved or he was heavily impacted by crack because his mom, Afeni, was a crack addict at that point. So I drove up to Marin City and I sat down with a bunch of crack dealers from the time. And sitting there with these guys was awesome, like awesome. And I always say the same thing. I think this helped me with this book. I actually think what I thought would be a weakness turned out to be a little bit of a strength, which is, I mean, they see me, right? I'm a white guy. I'm like a nerdy white guy. Like I'm not, you know, I'm not, and I was never dealing crack in Marin City. Like I'll confess. And I'll always say to guys with 100% sincerity, you will never find anyone who's happier to talk to you than me. Like I'm a white guy from New York. I always knew I was going to college. My mom was a probation officer. My dad was a CPA. Like I knew where I was going to college. I was surrounded by white people. I grew up in this rural MAGA universe. There wasn't MAGA then, but very conservative culture. You will never meet anyone who's more fascinated to talk to you than me. Never. And I really mean that. Like you will never, the crack dealer from Marin City, I want to hear all about it. And the other thing is, I will not judge you. I'm casting no judgments on you. I'm casting no aspersions on you. I'm not here to condemn your life. All I want to know is what it was like growing up in Marin City back when Tupac was here, what it was like being a crack dealer when Tupac was here, and what your relationship with Tupac was. And that's it. And I honestly think people find it refreshing. Number one, that I made the trip. It wasn't just call or Zoom. I made the trip. And number two, that here's this guy who's being very honest about it. And I always show the research I've done. So they say, oh, this guy, he's really, if nothing else, he's put in his work and he seems genuinely curious.
Or when you knock on Isaiah Ryder's door and
But it worked. It worked.
and it worked.
Yeah,
And
you gotta.
that's another thing I've learned is honestly being able to do this interview. I was just talking about it. The answer is always no unless you ask.
Yeah. And
And I
so
had someone tell me that.
I agree. It's 100% true. You're the old baseball thing. You hit all, you miss all the balls you don't swing at or whatever, you know. I think what I have learned, like people will hear the stories of knocking on doors, right? Or sitting down in rough areas. And it's like, you're so, man, you're brave, man. I don't know how you do that. You're brave. It's not. What you learn in life as you get older, and it's the best lesson for young people, I think, is you just learn to walk through your fear. Like I'm always terrified knocking on a door. I hate knocking on doors. It's not fun. Unannounced, knocking on a door. It's scary. I don't know who's behind the door. J.R. Ryder's crazy. I don't know what he's going to say when he answers the door. Like, I don't know. But your hands are clammy. You may take 5 drives around the block before you do it. You may walk up to the door, walk away, walk up, walk away. At some point, you're just like, I'm going to walk through this fear. I'm going to do it. And I've always lived to tell about it in the past. So I'll probably be able to live and tell about it here. That's all you can do. You don't get less. I'm not courageous. I'm not brave. I'm not. I'm truly not. You just learn to deal with your fear.
I think that's something, another thing I've learned is that everyone has stories.
Yeah.
Everyone has stories. You think, oh, I don't have anything to say. Yes, you do.
Correct.
Everyone has stories. And I guess that was a question I had for journalism students too. That sort of answered that. You've done hard news, and then but you do the research and then combining it with creativity. But I wanted to ask you, what advice would you not give? What would you tell journalists and those journalism students coming up to not do if in this career?
Number one, I would say don't be a fan. Like never be a fan. You're not a fan, right? I know the instinct is there. You're interviewing Olivia Rodrigo. Oh my God, I love Olivia Rodrigo. Like that's not your role here. That's not a journalist role, right? And number two, this is a thing to do, I guess. I'll mix it a little, but thing to like you need to do as much research about the people as possible for you. What will separate you as an interviewer is that you're not asking stupid questions. Like most journalists out there, especially on video, if you watch YouTube, but even print through the years, they'll be like, so you have an interview with Aaron Judge. And maybe you say, so Aaron, where are you from? Well, you've lost him. Like you should know where Aaron Judge is from. Aaron, how many siblings you have? You lost him. If you say, Aaron Judge, someone told me the other day that you used to, when you were growing up, you used to eat at this little Mexican restaurant on the corner of so and so. He's going to be like, "Whoa, how'd you know that?" Oh, well, I know so and so, and I read so and so. Oh, yeah, man, the burritos were amazing there. I used to eat those before every baseball game. And all of a sudden, you're off and running on a story. But if you ask Aaron Judge, how many siblings do you have? How old are you? Where are you from? So, like, know as much as you can beforehand. That's a big one.
That's a big one you've learned also with all the years of the sports reporter with Sports Illustrated and going into those clubhouses. And I remember there's sort of you wait back a little bit while the people ask the stupid questions,
You
and
hang
then
back.
you would come in with your Kingle hat.
I got that from, I did have the Kangol hat. I got that from Tom Verducci, who was just the king of baseball reporters. And Tom, I just would always watch him in the clubhouse, and like I was the number 2 guy and he was by far the number 1 guy. And he wasn't in the scrum. Like Jeter's out. He's not with the 12 other reporters with Jeter. He's waiting till the scrum is done. And they'll say, hey, Derek, I just wanted to ask you something in private. Number 1, you're not giving away your material to the other reporters. And number 2, there's an intimacy to it. And number 3, you get to show your professionalism in a one-on-one setting and establish a relationship with someone. So, yeah.
Yeah. Um. Why? Oh well. Since I am here at a high school, let's go back to Tupac on this one.
I've kept
As a
it
high
very
school,
G-rated, by the way, knowing your audience.
oh yes, that's right. Thank you. Know your audience. My high school students, I think it's hard to imagine someone sometimes what they were like in high school.
Mhm.
From your research on Tupac, and it sounds like he moved a lot. I know I read he moved a lot, and it was very volatile. What was his personality like as a high school student?
The best. So he was basically a butterfly. Like picture a butterfly fluttering around. Like that was Tupac. So Tupac, his freshman year, he went to Dunbar High School in Baltimore, not his best year. But then he spends the next 2 years at the Baltimore School for the Arts, which is a performing arts school. And it's the the best of Tupac. So because every day he's literally living in a row house in Baltimore in poverty, where the rats are scurrying along the floorboards at night, and you hear his sister was telling me about this. Like so, he's poor, he, he's impoverished. It sucks, but every day. Also, can you hear me? Okay, am I breaking up on you?
Oh yeah,
Oh, okay. Every day he goes to this school in Baltimore, and it's this performing arts school, and they're all kids just like him. They're creatives, they're singers, they're dancers, they're cello players and opera singers. And he goes into this. I went to the Baltimore School for the Arts, and you literally walk in and you hear a symphony playing from one of the rooms. It's one of the first sounds. It's beautiful. And Tupac back then was the kid with like, he had a peroxide yellow strip in his hair and a flat top, and he'd show up sucking on a baby bottle. He liked sucking on a baby bottle, and he had his nails painted, and he was very flamboyant and very, he loved this song "Don't Give Up" by Peter Gabriel and Kate Bush, and he did these dances to "Don't Give Up," and he just loved acting and loved performing and being in front of people, and like he, he was just he was the performing arts kid you would love. He really was. He was a performing arts kid you would love. He didn't have very much interest in sports at that point, moderate, but not a ton. Couldn't shoot a basketball or throw a football. He was just this creative, this beautiful kid who like loved having rap battles in the hallways and was writing poetry to his girlfriend and like was falling in love every other second with a different girl. And the cool thing about the School for the Arts, it was wildly diverse. So you had just this mix of all different people from all different cultures in this one stew of people desperately wanting to be performers. And he was the best. That was Tupac at his best. Was a performative, flamboyantly joyful, bad haircut, thrift store clothing, Tupac Shakur, who just saw so many possibilities in life.
I know exactly who that is here. I
Ah,
mean, there we do like
yeah. Every
we
school
do
has a
have
Tupac. An
every
old
school has that one. I have one coming back. I will tell you to July of 2001. I was on the Staten Island ferry. Yes, July of 2001. And there was this guy that came up to me and he said, "Hey," he was drunk or high or both. And he said, "Hey, do you want to see some pictures of Tupac and Biggie? They're alive." And I wish I would have said yes.
yeah.
I wish I would. He wanted me to pay him, and I didn't have a lot of money, but I wish I said yes, but I said no. Um, did you read anything, hear anything about the whole Tupac is alive in your research?
He's sitting right next to me. I could turn this and he,
Yes, he's right
wait,
there.
Mark, you want to talk? He's like, no, not you sure?
Yes.
Okay. But no, not today. Yeah. I mean, it's not true. He's dead. I spoke to enough people who were there when he died and were at the hospital when he died to confirm times a million he's dead. Also, like, it used to be like Tupac's going to come back. Well, it's been 29 years. So, like, if unless we all want to see the middle-aged Tupac comeback tour, which obviously would be huge. Um, no, he died. And all those rumors at the time. The thing is, he had an album that came out, I think a week after he died, Machiavelli. And people were saying that there was all this symbolism to the return from the dead and hiding and blah, 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 long stuff. And no, he's dead.
No.
Biggie's
Where
dead.
were you the night that he died? Do you remember what you were doing, where you were?
So I don't, but I remember finding out I was a writer at the Nashville Tennessean. And I remember finding out it's really interesting because I loved All Eyes on Me. That was a big album at the time. It was the album that came out, The Shirt of Your Student. Great album. I remember being at a work party and listening to Tupac. And it's very interesting because I was working at the newspaper and nobody in the department knew anything about Tupac. It was a very where I was in Nashville at that time, it wasn't very diverse. The newspaper wasn't very diverse. There's a lot of white writers, mostly older than me. And I ended up writing the piece about Tupac. And, is Tupac alive? Is he not alive? What happened? Blah, blah, blah. So I remember writing the story. But I will say, like, I don't think his death at the time had the impact on me that it would now. Like I was a young guy who listened to a lot of music. I loved Tupac, but I wasn't like a Tupac expert at that point. I was someone
Yes.
who just enjoyed his music. So I remember him dying in the same way I remember Kurt Cobain dying, or
Yes.
the Challenger explosion happening, like big events. But I can't say like I went home and cried.
Yeah, I think I'm from Jasper, Tennessee, teeny tiny town. And I just have this memory, not a huge fan at the time, but I was at a football game walking around the track and the news that Tupac got shot just rippled all around the track and it spread in about 5 minutes. And
Yeah.
even then it was then. If Tupac was alive, what would he be doing now?
So I have to preface this by saying it is completely a guess, and I do not know for sure. Okay.
Okay.
Number one, I think he would be. So I've been really disappointed out here in Southern California, not to get too political, but by the reaction of famous people to the ICE raids and grabbing of people, right? And I've been very disappointed, not just Jeannie Buss and Steve Ballmer, but like Dr. Dre, not a word. Ice Cube, not a word. Snoop Dogg, not a word. And I can't say what 54-year-old Tupac would be doing, but it is hard for me to imagine that he would just watch brown people, because it's almost all Latinos, being grabbed up by masked agents without identification, without warrants, without uh, any sort of cause, express cause, and would just sit there quietly and watch it. Not in his city, and he loved LA. So I don't think it's possible he would have run for office. It's possible he would have been an Academy Award. Jim Belushi told me he thought Tupac was 2 movies away from being an Academy Award caliber actor. But I think he would have definitely been a civic leader of some sort. And I think he would be absolutely disgusted, not only by what's going on, but by the lack of voice to what's going on.
I think it's interesting that 10 books about sports and then you move to a music biography.
Mhm.
And I immediately thought of Bob Woodward. So yes, I'm thinking of you and Bob Woodward and how
I don't
yeah,
know, Jeff.
he wrote all these books about politics and he's excellent at it. Um, but then somewhere, I think 1983, 1984, he wrote a biography of John Belushi. And
No,
then and it's, I could, and then he never wrote another biography again. You've said that writing sports is scheduled and predictable, and writing this one along, it's in this sentence where you wrote, it's like skateboarding on top of applesauce.
yeah,
Um, do you see yourself writing more books that's not about sports?
I hope so. I really enjoyed it. I mean, I enjoy is the wrong word. The books are hard. I'm not saying it's being a doctor or whatever, a firefighter, but they're mentally draining. And this book was incredibly hard and incredibly trying. But then it's always worth it at the end. You always feel good about it at the end. So yeah, I don't. I just you get pigeonholed sometimes, and I love sports, right? And I am a sports writer. I mean, I guess I am a sports writer, but like, yeah, I don't want to just do the same thing over and over again. Like the truth of the matter is the thing about books, like especially like the books I've written about teams with seasons. The problem with those is the seasons get repetitive. So like the 1982 Lakers playing the 76ers is not really that different than the 1983 Lakers playing the Sixers. And that's not that different than 84 playing the Sixers. And you really have to find the characters beneath the stories. You don't have that repetition with somebody's life, like not if they're not in sports. So I found everyone has some repetition, obviously, but I found the lack of repetition in Tupac's life both challenging because I didn't know where he was all the time. Like a sports team has a schedule. So you can see literally I know where Magic Johnson was on May 7th, 1984. I don't know where Tupac was. So that makes it harder, but I do like the unpredictability of life.
Yeah, I with the sports part, I remember with your Bo Jackson book, I was reading it, and then I've got about 50 pages left, and I'm thinking he has about 30 years left of his life. Like what's coming up? And then it turns out not much.
Yeah.
I mean, that part was really fascinating to me. And then he got injured, and then White Sox and Angels, and then he kind of fell off the face of the earth.
Sometimes there's like the thing is it's like your book to do what you want, right? Like I have a friend, Lee Montville, who's written a ton of books, and he wrote a Babe Ruth book. And I remember asking him, why would you write a Babe, not a mean way, but why Babe Ruth? There have been a lot of Babe Ruth books. And he's like, there's never been my Babe Ruth book. And like, meaning like you're the MC or the conductor of your own book. And like, I didn't think readers would be that fascinated by Bo Jackson devoting 200 pages to Bo Jackson running a food company. I just don't think that's why you're reading about Bo Jackson. So
Yes.
I made that call. Yeah.
And bow and arrow. I believe he does something
Yeah.
with
That's a
archery.
paragraph. That's a paragraph
Yeah,
or two. And that's cool. But yeah,
that's it.
more I'm reading about Bo Jackson to read about him, you know.
So with this,
Mhm.
this is the quintessential Tupac book.
Hope so.
And it is this is I think this is going to be the one. No one will ever out research you on this one. I don't believe the amount of sources, the people you interviewed. I think you said almost 700 people. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Um, that's difficult to top. I think it will be. This is not a question. I'm just saying this will be the quintessential Tupac book, and the world and the music world And honestly, my high school students need to read this.
Number one, I hope you're right. Number two, there have been many quintessential books that wind up at the store shelf. So who the heck knows? But if nothing else, I will say this. A good friend of mine named Jonathan Ige, who wrote a great MLK biography, which you should read,
Yes.
and a great Ali biography. He while working on Tupac, we had dinner one night and I was complaining to him about how hard it was. And he's basically like, suck it up, man. And he's like, you are getting paid to earn your PhD in Tupac Shakur. He's like, just like I got paid to earn a PhD in Martin Luther King. He's like, I would do that for free, and so would you. And I was like, I've quoted that a million times because it's a really important point. And like, I hope the book sells. Obviously, this is how I make my money and make my living. And you want to live for another book. But at the end of the day, I spent the last 3 years getting my PhD in Tupac, and that's kind of cool.
That's great. That's a great point. Like the one I have one little thing here. I'm obsessed with learning about the history of the world's largest cedar bucket. It is here in Murfreesboro.
Oh,
And yeah, I don't know why. There's 100-year history of the world's largest cedar bucket, and it's fascinating. And I love the little nuggets. And I don't know if I'll finish it one day, but I'm learning and getting a PhD in the world's largest cedar bucket.
I have a title for your book.
Oh, please.
Cedar Bucket, My Story.
From the first person point of view,
Yes,
even
correct. Write
better.
it from the bucket. I never
That's
knew I was a bucket. That's how it starts. I didn't, I
that's
know,
right.
I'm not sure the first time I realized I was a bucket.
Yes. Hey, is that a Tennessee Oilers hat, by the way?
This is a
Nice.
an Oilers hat, bite your tongue.
I appreciate that. One last question. While you were writing, can you even read for pleasure during
Oh,
the last 3 years?
it's very hard. You're reading nonstop Tupac stuff. Not that it's not pleasurable to a certain degree, but like I probably bought 80 books, because you're not just reading books about Tupac, you're reading books about the history of Baltimore, history of Northern California. You're reading books about the Black Panthers. You're reading books about Black empowerment in America. You're reading books about Las Vegas. And you're not reading them all. You're not reading the whole book. You're looking for what you're looking for. You're marking it up. I always, during the time I'm writing books, when I'm next to my wife in bed, I look at her with great envy because she is enjoying her books. Um, the other thing is you have a lot of dreams about the subject. I'm not making that up. Like a lot of dreams, and not good dreams. Like Tupac is choking you, or you've dropped your Tupac ball and it's rolled down the hill. Irrational stuff. You just, it drives you crazy. It drives you crazy. It actually does drive you crazy. It takes you to the point. No human being should reasonably do this job where you obsess over one person for 3 years. It's not a natural thing to do. And you're working for yourself. So you're doing it all day, all night, nonstop. Tupac, Tupac, Tupac. It's not natural.
No. Do you, before you write your next one, do you take a break,
No.
or are you constantly thinking about what's next?
You're always thinking about what's next because well, I had a 3 book deal for Tupac. So I actually have 2 other books that I have to do. Uh, and also like, I'll say to my wife, I'm like, I'm going to take 2 weeks off. And she'll see me after like a day. I'm like kind of jittery on the couch. Like despite everything I just said, I love what I do. I love this. Like I love this. I'm living my dream. If you told me when I was in high school, Mahopac High School, class of 1990, if you told me in high school, and this is not any brag or anything, I'm not saying what I do is great. If you told me, all right, you'd have 11 books, you're going to be 50, you're going to have 11 books. One of them is going to be a Tupac, going to be a bunch of New York Times bestsellers. You're going to have a book that becomes an HBO show. If you told me at 18 years old that you're going to live in Southern California, right? There's no way I would have believed it. And so many people along the way tell you, are you sure you know what you're doing? Is this my mom when I was a kid? You have to be realistic. You should be realistic. Like it's been a dream profession for me, right? A dream profession. So the reason I get itchy is because at the end of the day, I actually love doing this as hard as it is.
Did you know what you were doing?
No, I never knew I still don't really know. You just kind of wing it. I
Hmm.
knew I was confident in myself. Like I was confident in myself and I believed I've just always had an irrational, but I hope not cocky, like belief in myself. Like I know when I get assigned a story, I'm going to finish it. I know when I'm assigned a book, I'm going to do it. people told me about Tupac. Well, everyone's going to ask to be paid. You're not going to be able to do it. I knew I'd find a way. You got to find your way to do it. So uh, I have my doubts and moments, but generally I'm pretty confident in my ability to write a book.
I think that is important. It's a confidence. Sometimes writers will have the imposter syndrome. You think, nope, this
We
is,
all do.
we all
We all,
do.
we all do. We all do.
It's a battle.
We are
Well,
like, well, I do want to say lastly on that. I'm sorry.
yeah,
Like, especially your high school kids, right? It's the truth. You'll always think, I think a lot of high school kids, let's say you want to be a writer, okay? Because I used to do this. You look at someone like me, and I'm not saying anything great, but someone who's written a lot of books, and you think like the leap from where I am to there, that's so hard, that's impossible. But it's really not. You just have to work your butt off, believe in yourself. I think one of the things I learned early on that like did me so well. I used to think I was like this great writer. I realized there are a million writers better than me, right? There just are, factually. There are better writers than me out there. You can always control how hard you work, and you can always outwork the person on your left and the person on your right, and that will carry you so far. So if you're some high school kid and you want to be a writer, or you want to be an actor on Broadway, or you want to be a singer, or a rapper, or whatever, the biggest thing is not the biggest thing by far is just devoting yourself to it and working your butt off as hard as you can. Like by far, if you look at any writers who've survived in this medium, in this crazy world of AI generated content and magazines and newspapers falling apart, the one thing they all have in common, I guarantee you, is they work their asses off.
I love that. And I think I'm going to use a word you said that your editor's editor has said that was always a word you used a lot. Hence, this will be the end of our interview. Was that what I know? I've got words that I use over
Correct.
and over. Hence, that's yours.
My wife will be like, she'll read my copy. And at first she'll be nice. She'll just cross out. And once she gets to the seventh hence in a draft, she'll circle it and say, like, stop using hence with like five.
Yes. Oh, she wrote. Well, she's an author too.
Correct.
The Family Coach. Yeah,
Correct. Two parenting books. Very good
that's
writer.
right. Oh, it's not Just Say No. That was Nancy Reagan. It was.
Well, it was two of them. Ignore it. And then
Yeah,
first, oh, another book.
that
Yeah.
was it. Jeff Pearlman, thank you so much for
Yeah.
this interview. I think a lot will we'll get a lot out of it about this for our students and the craft and Tupac and Tupac with this book coming out that you worked for 3 years. It's your baby. It's your 11th, and then plus your two kids. And then thank you so much for coming on with me.
Well, I mean, you did promise that your students would each buy 5 books. So I decided I would come on.
Yes, I have two of them on the book order, and I get my money in November, so it's happening.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Yes.
These are great questions. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you for your time.